So hello everyone and welcome for another great meeting of yoga readers. I'm very happy to see you all here today. Today we will discuss the third chapter of Light on Life by B.K.S. Iyengar. I'm very glad about our reading community. When I thought about the idea of creating a community of readers who are interested in yoga and reading about yogic books, I didn't think that we will have so many people interested, and I'm constantly getting great feedbacks from people who are either joining us in our sessions or listening in with the recordings, and it really warms my heart, and I feel so grateful to be part of this. So it was my idea, the small me, but I had no idea of how big this will be and how I will enjoy it as well. I have to admit, I really like it. I like reading the book again with you. I like preparing for our meetings, and I'm very excited about today's talk. For those of you who are joining us today and don't know me yet, my name is Agi Vitir. I live in Jerusalem, Israel, and I did my BA, MA, and PhD about Hinduism under religious studies. I focused on yoga during all these years. I studied Sanskrit and Tamil because I did a research about the Tirumandiram. I wanted to go back to it in my postdoc. And during my PhD thesis, 7 years of research were about a women-oriented Iyengar yoga practice. So I studied Iyengar yoga carefully. I was lucky enough to interview Gita Iyengar and also Abhijata Iyengar and Prashant and Sunita Iyengar for my research. And today, apart from reading, of course, from this wonderful book, I will add on from some of my academic knowledge about this. And I hope that we can also share from our either theoretical or empirical knowledge as practitioners of yoga. So today's chapter is called Vitality. And I really like this headline because Iyengar discusses prana, which is the vital energy or the vital force that lies underneath or within every living being. And the idea that he presents, it's not his idea. Prana is a very ancient theory or concept in Hinduism, and it's in ancient texts as well. But the idea that through our breath, or through our concentration in our breath, we can channel the vital forces within us is revolutionary. It's absolutely amazing. So in the previous chapter, he discussed how through asana practice, through yoga postures, we can modify ourselves, we can connect to deeper sheaths within ourselves, we can nourish our mind, we can affect ourselves in many, many layers through working through the outer sheath, through the body. But this idea of working through the breath or the energy to change something in our human existence is huge. And I'm very, very thrilled to discuss this today with you. Some of you asked me about a lecture I gave about prana. I called it Vital Forces in Yoga Between Prana and Kundalini. The lecture was in Hebrew, and the reading group in Israel asked for it. That's why I gave a talk. It was separate from the activities of the reading yoga community because we were not reading something together, but I gave a 1-hour lecture. And it's now only in Hebrew. If you want me to give you a talk, write to me, let's talk about it, but it's not what I had in mind. So today we will just read together and talk about prana. Okay, So in this chapter, Iyengar speaks about prana as an energy that can be, let's say, manipulated or directed in the body. It can be stuck, which is not good. It can be wasted, which is even worse. But if we work on it correctly, if we acknowledge it and we understand the technology of prana, let's say pranayama, we can direct it and even enhance it in the body. And he also says that we have to have more prana in order to have a spiritual practice. It should not stay at a physical practice, which gives us something, but it should penetrate deeper. He says that when we practice asanas or yoga postures, we must have intention and awareness. That's one way of directing our prana. And he gives a wonderful explanation about how negative emotions are disturbing this vital energy, and that we must recognize these 6 mental disturbances, which are lust, pride, obsession, anger, hatred, and greed. They all drain prana and they hinder our progress in our yoga practice. And even more interesting than looking at these bad or negative emotions, he lists beneficial emotions that we should nourish, and that they can like compensate or help us overcome our negative emotions that are just part of our life. I don't claim not to ever be angry. Of course not. If we look at the past several months of my life, I've been angry. I felt hatred. I was very angry. I don't know about lust and pride, but yes, so we go through all these human emotions, and it's not about avoiding them. It's about how to deal with them. And he even says that some of them can be used in a good way. That's also very interesting. And then prana or breath, and that concept I feel brilliant. You can only breathe in the present moment. Every time we are breathing, it happens right now. So connecting to prana is, in a way, is to let go of past and not to be in the future, but to be exactly in the present. And just by focusing ourselves, bringing ourselves to the present moment, connects us to prana. So that's enough about talking about the chapter. Let's go into reading the chapter. And I'll do what we did last time. I'll give you a few seconds. Whoever wants to read will just open the mic and read the parts marked in yellow. We start in page 66. All vibrating energies are prana. And if no one will read, then I will have to read myself. So please.
I'll read.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All vibrating energies are prana. All physical energies such as heat, light, gravity, magnetism, and electricity are also prana. It is the hidden and potential energy in all beings, released to the fullest extent as a response to any threat to one's survival. It is the prime mover of all activity. It is energy that creates, protects, and destroys. Hindus often say that God is generator, organizer, and destroyer. Inhalation is the generating power. Retention is the organization power. And exhalation, if the energy is vicious, is the destroyer. This is prana at work. Vigor, power, vitality, life, and spirit are all forms of prana. Prana is usually translated as breath, yet this is only one of its manifestations. According to the Upanishads, it is the principle of life and consciousness. It is equated with the soul, Atman. It is the breath of life of all beings in the universe. They are born through it and live by it. And when they die, their individual breath dissolves into the cosmic breath. It is the most essential, real, and present feature of every moment of our lives, and yet it remains the most mysterious. It is yoga's job, and especially pranayama's, to enter into into the heart of this mystery.
Yes, please go on.
Prana, in the form of breath, is the starting point. The suffix ayama means stretch, extension, expansion, length, breath, regulation, prolongation, restraint, and control. Put in its simplest form, therefore, pranayama means the prolongation and restraint of breath. Since prana is energy and life force, pranayama means the extension and expansion of all our vital energies. It has to be clear that you cannot just increase the volume of anything as volatile and explosive as pure energy without taking steps to contain, harness, and direct it. If you are suddenly to triple the strength of the electrical current arriving in your house, you would not think that kettle would boil in a third of the usual time and your lights burn 3 times brighter. You know, you would immediately burn out all the circuits and be left with nothing. Why should our body be different? This is why Patanjali clearly stated that between the practice of asana and pranayama, there is a step up. There has to exist through proficiency in asana, strength and stability in the circuitry of the body to withstand the increase in current that pranayama practice will bring.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is quite huge, and he discusses many things here that I will just touch upon. So he says the concept of prana is really ancient, and I wanted to add that it appears in the Atharva Veda as well. I think the first time prana is in the Atharva Veda, and then it is again in the Katha Upanishad. So the most ancient Upanishad, and then even before in the Veda. And it repeats itself again and again through various yogic texts, tantric texts, and of course it's in Ayurveda as well. And he gives many words for what prana is, and usually it is used as vital energy that is part of the universal life force around us. And this idea of if we observe the breath, inhalation, retention, and exhalation, we can see how creation, organization, or to sustainability, and then destruction, how this cycle of creation and destruction, how it happens in our breath. This is beautiful in my eyes to see how the human body and the cosmic world kind of mirror each other. That's another idea in yogic texts. I wanted to add here about what he says at the end, how Patanjali warns us. So in many yogic texts, there are warnings against practicing pranayama. Some of them state that you should stick to the easy pranayama, so without breath retention, while others say that the real pranayama is kumbhaka. There are 2 kinds of breath retentions, and one of them is considered to be even better, and that a yogi should strive to just stop his breath for as long as possible, and that will bring on moksha or liberation. But other yogic texts say, no, you should stick to postures and do, they call it mild pranayama practices. So this warning that he said, that even Patanjali says it, yes, many texts say it, and it's like a common knowledge that it's one thing to practice yama and niyama and then go into postures, and then we level up as we go to pranayama. Some texts even say that you might burn yourself if you overdo it. And that's the parallel he gives with the electricity. So if you have more volume, it's not that the kettle will not work in third of the time, it will burn, right? So he won't say it, doesn't want to shock us, but basically that's what the texts say, that you will just burst into flames if you overdo your pranayama practice. So that is very interesting, because he said we can just, it's in our reach. We are breathing constantly. It's about awareness. It's about how to practice it. And at the same time, it's very dangerous for us human beings to practice pranayama. And he's holding both sides. Okay, so we move on. Thank you, Michal, for reading. And this is should be 86, but I think it's earlier on. Yeah.
'68.
68, thank you. So it flipped for me. Okay, so 68. Someone? Okay, it's short, so I'll just read it.
No, I'll read.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Whether we are talking about the outermost sheath or this more interior one, we are always bringing the light of awareness. Prana is always involved in carrying that light of awareness. Only now we are consciously generating and directing it. In yoga philosophy, both energy, prana, and consciousness, chitta, are considered to evolve directly out of cosmic intelligence, Mahat. Mahat is the universal intelligence of nature. The rocks have universal intelligence. Every leaf has it. Every cell of every creature has it. It is all pervasive and infinite. The genius of nature's intelligence is self-expression. That is why nature is infinitely varied, infinitely inventive. Prana is our link to this infinite intelligence. What a shame it is that we have such access and ignore its use and development. We are like someone with a vast fortune locked in a numbered bank account who forgets the number and so must scrape by in poverty. We live within our individual consciousness with its limited intelligence, often feeling lonely and puny when there is a conduit available directly to cosmic consciousness and intelligence. Through this conduit flows prana, joining each individual among us to the highest original principle of nature. Pranayama is about restoring this conduit so that the intelligence bearing the energy of the macrocosm can illuminate our microcosm.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is about how the body is a reflection of the whole world, of the macrocosm, right? The universe. How the energy within us is a link not only to inner sheaths of our existence, but also to everything around us. And if we think of the breath, that's a way to. I'll give you a short example of something he said earlier that can explain more this passage about the breath. The moment we are born, this outside material that we cannot see comes into our body, then it shifts in and out constantly, and the moment we die, it goes back out again. And that same air will go into our next body and our next incarnation, or just the next person who is born into this world, does not matter. But this matter of air that is all around us, it has been here before, it will be here after us, I hope. And it's an amazing thing that moves in and out of us constantly. We are in a constant discussion with the world, contact with the world through the breath. Isn't that amazing? I always have this thought in my mind when I enter a Hindu temple. And the smell is different, of course. And I think about who were the people who took breaths in this space, right? I don't get it in the old city of Jerusalem, but the idea of a closed space that holds still the air, that was not ventilated for a long time, and who were the people who took their breaths in this confined space? I get this thought sometimes. So let's continue with our wonderful book. I'm jumping here to page 71. Pranayama is not normal breathing.
I can read this. Pranayama is not normal breathing, nor is it just deep breathing. It is the technique of generating cosmic vital energy through the fusion of the antagonistic elements of fire and water. Fire is the quality of mind, and water is the element that corresponds to the physiological body. Water douses fire, and fire evaporates water, so they're not easily brought together. Air is the interface whose flow in the lungs provides the dynamic stream that fuses water and fire and produces an energetic current of prana. This spreads through the nervous system and bloodstream and is distributed around the body, rejuvenating every cell. The earth element in the form of body provides the physical location for the production of energy. And the fifth and most subtle element, space or ether, offers the space required for the energy's distribution. The need for a harmonious and symmetrical space explains the importance of the spine and its supporting the I lost track where it is. Supporting muscular for the spine is the central column of the nervous system. By lifting and separating the 33 articulations of the vertebral column, and by opening the ribs from the spine like a tiger's claw, we deepen and lengthen the breath. The analogy of the production of energy through the hydroelectric power may prove helpful. Stagnant water can create no energy, which means if you're not breathing, you're dead. If you're breathing normally, there is some flow, and you produce just enough energy for the requirement of the moment. But there's no surplus to be invested in the other projects. It is only by the technique of pranayama, which regulate, channel, and in retention of breath, dam the flow all the better to harness and extract its inherent power, that we produce sufficient energy to vitalize the whole system. We must live fully before we die. We must generate sufficient energy to realize our full potential. The journey to our infinite core of being is arduous. Only pranic energy can take us there. Watching the flow of the breath also teaches stability of consciousness, which leads to concentration. There's no finer method. The power of concentration allows you to invest your energy judiciously. In the yogic scheme of things, the highest application of that concentration and the power of vision is meditation. By learning to appreciate breath, we learn to appreciate life itself. The gift of breath is the gift of life. When we receive a gift, we must feel gratitude. Through pranayama, we learn gratitude for life and gratitude towards the unknown divine source of life. Let us look now more closely at the movement of breath, their implications and effects.
Thank you. Okay. So here he explains about pranayama. Maybe it's a good place to stop and say what most of you know, that B.K.S. Iyengar wrote a very famous book, Light on Pranayama, that explains more about prana, more about how to practice pranayama. It's fully illustrated and there are very clear instructions. And this chapter is not about that. Here he is not giving techniques. He's talking about how this layer of our being is relevant to our life. So light on life, and he cannot not talk about prana, but he does not go into what practices actually should be done. So here he talks about the anatomical aspects of the body as the skeletal structure, and also the structure of elements according to Sankhya Yoga. He talks about these 5 elements and explains how through the practice of pranayama we develop awareness, which then helps us to develop concentration ability. So it's like a stepping stone in order to make us our mind more sharp than and then he speaks about the parts of breath, which is also a very ancient concept of having different parts of our breathing. It's not a flow of a cycle. It is a cycle, but it is not one part. It's not a breath, but an inhalation, a stop, an exhalation, a stop or a retention. And here I wanted to add what I already said, that different yogic texts discuss different kinds of pranayama, and that some of them said that we should use pranayama not to have more energy, not to have a better circulation or more oxygen to the body, but actually to purify the body. That is in the Dharma Sutras and in the Pashupata Sutras. And this idea of purification, we know from certain pranayama techniques like nadi shodhana that are supposed to clear the nadis, the energetic channels in our bodies. Then I wanted to tell you that some other texts warn practitioners from long breathing stops, like the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra from the 11th century, and that in later Hatha yogic texts like the Goraksha Shataka and the Hatha Pradipika, which are more known about 14th, 15th century, there Kumbhaka is the main practice, and it's supposed to elevate the energy in one's body, and then through meditation they can go into liberation. So we go into page now 82. 82, the 6 emotional disturbances. And I don't want us to go really deep into the negative part, but we will read a part of it. So whoever is willing to read, please.
I'll read again.
Thank you.
Through yoga, we are able to lessen the 6 emotional disturbances that cause us so much anguish: lust, pride and obsession, anger, hatred, and greed. They are called negative emotions by Western psychology or deadly sins by Christianity, and indeed these emotional reactions are the enemies of spiritual growth when they are beyond our control. However, each of these emotions exists for a purpose and can be used wisely. For example, the same emotions are transformed and expressed in sentimental terms, gestures, and poses in the composition of Indian classical dance. Indeed, our feelings have a great deal of energy, which, when not directed outward at the world, can be cultivated for our inward journey. Religions tell us to get rid of these emotions, but we cannot. They are human emotions that we will feel whether we want to or not. Suppression does not work. George Stephenson invented the steam engine because he noticed that steam in a boiling kettle lifted the lid. The force was irresistible. Yoga is about channeling and transforming that energy to higher purposes, just as Stephenson used the energy of steam to drive locomotives. There is a saying that war is diplomacy conducted by other means. It would be truer to say that war is greed or pride enacted on the stage of human history. So, since emotions are part of the physiological interface between body and mind, let us look at these 6 disturbances in greater detail. 99% of all human communication is emotional, not intellectual. Emotions, far more than thoughts, guide most behavior in the world. Emotions relate not only to what we feel, but to the value we place on things. Human life is concerned very much with exchanges, and when we disagree about the value of what we are exchanging, misunderstanding and disharmony can ensue. To understand the emotions, we have to recognize the role the ego plays in them, which I shall explain later. In these emotional disturbances, most people become stuck and find themselves bouncing from one to the other like billiard balls. Yoga helps in allowing us to get off this emotional pool table. It teaches us how to control our emotions so they do not control us. In this way, we can sublimate them and become masters of our circumstances and not slaves to them. In our spiritual quest, it is required of us that we develop our body in such a way that it is no longer a hindrance, a drag, but becomes our friend and accomplice. Similarly, our emotions and intellect must be developed for divine purposes. Since we all suffer from them, yoga tends to see them as sicknesses of mind, inherent problems that devolve from the human condition itself. After all, you do not blame someone who lives in a tropical swamp when he catches malaria. You simply look for ways to cure him. The man is not evil. The mosquito is only doing what mosquitoes do, and the swamp is probably rich in food and life, or else no one would live there. So it is not a question of looking for blame, but looking for a solution.
Thank you. We can read it again and again, can't we? It's just so inspiring. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that he says we have these 6 negative emotions, but we don't want to not feel them, that we cannot not feel them. We just need to learn how to get over them in a way. And the solution he talks about is to allow these emotions to pass through us as the sun keeps on shining when the clouds pass her or him, the sun, and the clouds just have to pass the sun. So we have to let these emotions come and pass, not cling to them. And he says that the negative emotions are a problem, not when we feel them, but when they are captured by memory, smriti, which is another concept that he will discuss later, then they become emotions that are detached from the present moment, and they kind of cling into us. They are accumulated density. He calls it darkness. And then he says that they poison us. So these negative emotions, they come and they have to pass. Don't try to not feel them, he says, but also don't cling to them. Don't accumulate them, because then you will have a problem later on in your practice. We go now to page 94. I'll share again that it's a very hard work to choose what to read and then one not to read, and I always apologize to the paragraphs that I leave out. So I want to read now the healthy vrittis, so the healthy mind waves, after we read the negative ones.
I'll read.
Thank you.
The healthy vrittis. The first specific advice that Patanjali gives us about these disturbances, I will translate very loosely. If you're happy, pleasant, and unselfish in your behavior towards others, obstacles will shrink. If you're miserly with your emotions and judgmental in your mind, obstacles will grow. More precisely, what Patanjali said is this: in order to achieve a serene consciousness, we have to be willing to change our behavior and approach toward the external world. This is for our own good. Certain treatments, known as the healthy and healing qualities of consciousness, cultivate the mind and smooth the yogic path. They are Maitri, cultivation of friendliness toward those who are happy; Karuna, cultivation of compassion toward those who are in sorrow; Mudita, cultivation of joy toward those who are virtuous; and Upeksha, cultivation of indifference or neutrality toward those who are full of vices.
Thank you. And since this was short, I'd like you to read the next one as well.
Sure.
I'll just add here that it's nice and in my eyes also balanced, not to talk only about the negative emotions we have, but how to cultivate the positive ones. And these emotions that he mentioned are very common also in Buddhist teachings, and they appear in other texts as well. So I like to look at them, and whenever I feel very angry about injustice, how can I make it better? Or is it my business? Can I take one step back? How do I deal with this emotion? I don't say that I counter it by a happy thought or by a positive emotion, but that I look at it, I let it be, and then I use these healthy vrittis, as he calls them, to kind of balance out the picture and give us more breathing space when it's hard to breathe in these negative emotions. So the next part, and that's the last reading part for today, is in page 96. Positive emotions. I hope this is 96.
Positive emotions are not the same as virtue. Virtue is valor, moral courage, persistence in adversity, and protection of the weak against the tyranny of the strong, not hand-wringing sympathy. Compassion is the recognition of sameness, of kinship with others. It is potent and practical. Alcoholics, drug addicts, and sex addicts were welcome to use my house as a safe haven until their cravings subsided to a manageable level. For 50-odd years, I have given several medical classes a week for the most intractable cases. I'm glad for the benefit that this has given my patients. I'm equally glad for the benefit it has brought me, the opportunity to meet and greet the Godhead within each man, woman, and child, and with openness, energy, and ingenuity to try to palliate their sorrows. Similarly, the virtue of others is not a reproach to our own inadequacy, but an uplifting example to us. Not only the great, like Gandhiji, fulfill this role. If you watch a sportsman who has won a cup speak of his victory with modesty and gratitude and with generosity towards his adversaries, is not his virtuous behavior a feast for you also? These healing qualities are jewels that bring grace to our consciousness and life. Pranayama, our breath, can also help. We can bring calmness and quietness to our minds and our emotions with a retention of breath after exhalation. I've said that exhalation empties the brain and pacifies the ego, bringing it to quiescent humility. When you empty the brain, you also empty the toxins of memory. With an exhalation and retention, you let go of resentment, anger, envy, and rancor. Exhalation is a sacred act of surrender, of self-abandonment. At the same time, we abandon all those stored up impurities that cling to the self, our resentments, angers, regrets, desires, envies, frustrations, and feelings of superiority and inadequacy, and also the negativity that causes the obstacles to adhere to consciousness. When ego falls away, they fall away with it. Of course they return, but the remembered experience of peace acts as proof that these obstacles are not insurmountable. They can be detached and disposed of. Ultimately, they are not permanent and integral to consciousness, but ailments that can be cured. We carry so many toxins in memory, feelings that we have stored away and allowed to stagnate and fester. We get so used to carrying this sack of rubbish around that we even conclude it is just part and parcel of our character.
Thank you. Yeah, I relate to that. So basically what I take from this bit is that pranayama can help us, but there's a way out. And that now it would be a good time to discuss it. So I prepared 3 discussion questions. I will send them to you, but now I will read them out. So the first one is, how and why do negative emotions drain our bodies of prana? The second is, how does practicing yoga help preserve or restore prana? And the third is, did you feel a change in your energy level after practicing yoga, which is asana or pranayama? So we are back from the breakout rooms, and I went through both discussions. It was quite interesting to hear you. This is time to open the microphone and share whatever thoughts you had, questions you might have, ideas for improvements, anything that comes to mind. This is the time.
I need clarifications about what pratyahara is,
Yes, please.
as I have not reached it yet. You tell me.
So just generally what pratyahara is. Pratyahara, that's a part of this chapter we did not reach, as I felt that it opens up a new subject that pranayama leads to. He says it leads to pratyahara naturally, but then what happens there, that has to do with the next chapter, chapter 4. So pratyahara is the 5th part or anga or limb of the Ashtanga yoga, of the 8-limbed yoga. And if we translate it, it's about the word moving our withdrawal of senses. That's the word. So it's the withdrawal of senses. Our 5 senses are constantly facing outward into the world, the natural world. And the withdrawal would mean to change the direction of where we are looking at, hearing at, tasting at, smelling at, and so on. And they all go inside. So you hear in yoga classes, look within, or look with your inner eyes. That's the language of pratyahara. And there is this idea of when you reach a certain level of pranayama, you start hearing your heartbeat, you hear the sound of your breath, so you hear whatever is inside. And there is even more, there is a theory of nada yoga, of sounds coming from within, or sounds of the universal that are revealed to you when the concentration go within. You might have this experience of the teacher was talking to you while you were in shavasana or in pranayama practice, and you did not quite follow. So you were detached from the outside, the senses were not facing outside and like receiving whatever you were hearing, you were concentrated within. Or when you are looking outside, you are gazing and something moves in front of you and you did not catch it. That's because your eyes were open, but your attention was withdrawn. So these are these small glimpses of when our attention is moving, let's say, elsewhere, but in a yogic practice, it should move inward. That would be pratyahara. And in Iyengar yoga, they put the bandage over the eyes and ears. There is this practice of, there's a mudra of closing all the sensory openings in our head. That does not include the skin, but okay. So these are yogic practices of sensory withdrawal. Yeah, we'll get into it more.
No, that was good. Thank you. I did understand, and actually I did feel it sometimes. So yeah, okay, great. No, thank you.
Good. Okay, so thank you all for joining today. And we will have another session following the reading of chapter 4. And I hope seeing you all again. And please keep on letting me know your feelings during the reading, as some of you are doing. I'm enjoying all these messages that I get through Facebook and WhatsApp. I'm really available reading them. It gives me strength and power to get ready to our next meeting. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.